Where's the Italian?
It's over 9,000! What?
Covered with scorpions. Oh, there's people.
Weird.
We can't all make declarations of hatred at the same time. Hi, everybody.
There are dozens of us. Dozens!
你好中国比较西呢，我爱更尊重中。Shield up. There's nothing sacred. Space. Disappointed.
Alton, help me up onto his casket so I can dance on it.
I don't care.
But how did you ever find us?
Oh, easy. We just read the screenplay you left us.
And Hispanic people too.
Gold!
That means you get.
You get nothing! You lose! Good day, sir!
Everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out.
Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in.
Huh? Zappuccino.
What do you know? What do you say? M4 Empire, Marvin Movie Monster Montanaro here alongside with the incomparable Lorn Connor.
I am incomparable.
I think so. I find it very hard to compare other people to you.
Yes, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
I myself have trouble explaining other people to people who are not me.
Lauren, this is like a 1-2 punch for us today because tonight Kevin's not going to be able to make it for Lauren and Apollo tonight. So tonight it's you and me again on your show tonight on the Pro Channel.
Yep, we have no idea what we're doing yet, but we'll make it fun and entertaining.
Yes. But don't worry, guys. Despite that we have no idea what we're going to be talking about, it's going to be a good show. We're going to have a lot of fun. I might be falling asleep in my chair by 11 o'clock tonight, but you know we'll make it work. But Lauren, how has the week been treating you thus far?
Well, it's a little early. Something happened earlier in the week that I haven't told anybody about. This chair that I'm sitting in has been with me for about 25 years.
Gosh.
And it's a really comfortable chair. That's part of why I haven't replaced it. It's duct taped all to heck just to kind of keep it together. But the other day I sat in it and a caster broke clean off. It actually collapsed on me as I was sitting in it. So this whole week I've just been sort of sitting in a particular way to make sure that I don't pitch over backwards. I tried to go to Costco to get a replacement chair earlier in the week, and the one chair that I wanted was out of stock. So I'm waiting for them to restock so I can replace this poor old chair.
Lauren, I love you and you're my friend, but if you fall over in the middle of the stream, I will never stop laughing.
Neither will Steve. I guarantee you he'll clip that and he'll make all kinds of use of it.
I will laugh until I pass out from lack of oxygen. Like,
well, there are 6 casters, so I think I'm probably safe. But I've got a position to where I don't really have to work at it too hard to sit up straight. But every once in a while, I'll start to tilt back, and it will go farther than I expect, and I realize, whoop, better not do that.
I'm imagining like your legs just fly up in the air, and oh my gosh, oh, that would be a clip that never stops playing.
Well, like I said, I'm going to do my very best not to give you that opportunity, but if it does happen, clip it and make the most out of it, because I know that's the kind of thing that people like. So
for me, so it has been a wild week for me. We had a video that hit majorly over the weekend. It was our coverage of Nerdrotic's Spock live stream that and it is, the last time I looked, it was at like 35,000 views, and we gained like almost 1,000 subscribers in the last couple of days. So, I mean, we are rocking and rolling right now. So if you're a new subscriber to the channel, guys, welcome. We appreciate having you here. We are going to be celebrating this Thursday night on the M4 cast with all of our co-hosts, with me, Lorn, Kevin, Trish, Nolan, and Martin, and we are going to be doing our 6,000 subscriber celebration. So we hope you'll all join us for that Thursday at 8 p.m. But on top of that, I have been like, the thing about drinking water is you have to remember to do it. And I have been like gross. I was like grossly dehydrated over the weekend. And like now I'm trying to like just drink as much water as I can and cut down on caffeine, because I think like the energy drinks that I suck down like they're, shots have been
they're not good for you.
Are not good. No. So I'm trying to cut down on those. I had a cup of coffee this morning. I'm allowing myself maybe one more cup of coffee later in the day. But other than that, it is just water. Thankfully, I've got this water bottle. It's called Circle. And so like this thing is actually like you change this out and it's a different flavor shot. So it doesn't add any calories, but it adds flavor to it. So this is like strawberry watermelon right now.
I looked into those because I was kind of curious about them. I ended up refraining from getting them because I think all of the flavor cartridges, they're all sugar-free, right?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, that's to see. I can't do the artificial sweeteners. They just drive me nuts.
Yeah. Well, I'm enjoying them thus far. So, all right, guys, this is a show that is made for you and financed by you. We count on your generous super chats to keep the lights on around here. So we do stop periodically to take your super chats and invite you into the conversation, to interact more directly, to be a part of the show, to influence what we will be talking about. And I see Chef Eddie right now is checking in for $5. As your show tonight should be on the mythology and folklore of the Ewoks. No show has really deep dive into that.
You could do like 2 minutes. I think that's about as much material as you could stretch out of it.
I mean, we know an Ewok, though. Like, we know a literal Ewok in Paul Chato.
I guess that's a literal truth. Do you think he knows anything about Ewok religion?
No.
If we asked him, what do you think his response would be?
I don't think he knows anything about the Ewoks, to be perfectly honest. He just knows that he was one. For those that don't know, Paul Chato, who, you've seen him on our show, you've seen him on the Pro Show, he's on Midnight's Edge every week. Chato was the voice of one of the Ewoks on the Ewoks cartoon. So like we literally are friends with an Ewok. It's like a lifelong dream that I had as a child to befriend an Ewok. And now I'm friends with an Ewok.
Even I, as a kid, never had a lifelong dream to befriend an Ewok. You
didn't want to party with the Ewoks?
No, not really.
You never saw like them dancing around in their like treetop village and be like, man, I want to be a part of that.
Ewoks are a little creepy. I'm not gonna lie.
Because they were gonna cook Han Solo and eat his flesh doesn't mean that they would do that to you, Lorn.
One of the things that I did like back in the day was there was a real-time strategy game called Force Commander, and they did this later in Battlefront 2, I think, as well. When you got to the Endor campaign, you played in Force Commander as both the Rebels and the Empire, but when you're on Endor, you're the Empire. And those nasty little gorillas in the jungle absolutely dismantle the Imperial walkers. It's like it was the scariest campaign in the entire game. You go through every other level just stomping through everything because you're the Empire, man. You get to Endor, it's like you get that 1,000-yard stare. It's like I don't ever want to see and that's the other thing. You never see them. You're just taking damage and things are falling apart because those Ewoks, they know how to dismantle the Empire.
Did you ever play the DLC for Force Unleashed 2? It's the one thing about Force Unleashed 2 that I actually liked.
I have it, but I never completed the Force Unleashed 2.
So the DLC, much like the DLC from Force Unleashed, where you play the future of the dark side ending, Force Unleashed 2's dark side ending, in the DLC, you're on Endor, and I guess Luke is dead, and Leia is a Jedi, and you're trying to fight your way to her, but you're fighting your way through the Ewoks, and you are just dismembering and destroying and throwing and shocking and just eliminating Ewoks constantly.
Can you imagine the smell?
Of Ewoks? Of like burning
Yeah.
Ewoks?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you got to look at the pelts on those guys. You've got
Mhm.
to imagine that they probably emit a number of natural oils, and I
Yeah.
imagine that their fur is probably pretty matted to start with, being arboreal dwellers. I don't see a lot of hygienic opportunities for Ewoks there on Endor, so roasting those things has probably got a certain piquant odor that I'm not sure that would be pleasant.
Yeah, maybe that's another question we should ask Chado.
You're really going to push for that for tonight's stream, aren't you?
I don't know.
We bought into this. We're killing our
look,
material if we do.
The Smallville writers once said that every time they sat down to write a new episode, they started with Lionel Luthor wakes up and has wings. Let's do better than that. So our Lionel Luthor with wings right now is an entire show on the religious beliefs of the Ewoks.
I think we can surpass that somehow.
Let's do better than that.
I don't know what we're gonna
case
do.
Scenario.
I don't know what we're gonna do, but I'm sure we can come up with something better than that.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially because Star Wars videos right now, unless it's an AI reinterpretation of Star Wars, are not doing very well, and that kind of is what inspired my topic here for today for the show of is Lucasfilm actually dead? And I said Lucasfilm and not Star Wars because it's more than just Star Wars. What were we saying, Lorn?
I just say great plan, Cotton. Let's take the one subject that everybody is universally agreeing is that these videos do terrible, and let's do a show on it.
Yep, that was my plan.
You think the Lucasfilm dodge is going to get you past the fact that it's like, oh well, it's Lucasfilm, then of course I'm interested.
Well, you know what? I mean, like, how did my Indiana Jones video do from yesterday? I gotta check it real quick. Let me see. Yeah, that one's at 447 views, which is, within bounds, but like it's still not great. So, yeah, it takes a special kind of masochist to keep wading into this water. But
all right, let's stink the place up.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, so everyone is kind of looking right now at Lucasfilm and Star Wars and Indiana Jones is like, oh, it's a new beginning. It's a new beginning. I don't necessarily think that it's a new beginning. I literally think nothing is going to change because Dave Filoni has been in charge creatively for quite a while now.
No, I actually don't think that's true. And this is why I've been getting in trouble a little bit with folks in the chat because they're saying I'm a Pollyanna, I'm too optimistic, et cetera, et cetera. And I understand there are a lot of people that are black-pilled about everything having to do with Lucasfilm, and it's easy to see why, because of how they are staffed. Right. What I keep going back to is that it's a little easier now with Kathleen actually finally gone to look back on the events of the previous year and start to notice some things that with hindsight become a little bit more obvious that weren't necessarily as obvious while we've just been sitting here waiting. Right. And that is, to me, there are some real serious signs that about a year ago, something happened. And my contention is it was the Acolyte. But I think there's a lot of factors that were also contributing. And I think that Disney looked at the reception to the Acolyte and said, that's enough. We're done with this, whatever this is. And it's around that time that suddenly everything got really, really quiet at Lucasfilm. And that's part of why it's been difficult to talk about is that there hasn't been any material. And I would argue that's by design. Right. What we have heard is that there have been refits of the Millennium Falcon at Galaxy's Edge that allowed them to upgrade the screens and also change the nature of the experience of the ride so that they could have a different experience, which indicates they're not sticking with the one they currently have. We now know that they're going to have the original trilogy characters in the parks. That's an easy thing that they can do that will generate some interest and signal tacitly that, hey, we know these are the guys you want. We've heard nothing out of story. The High Republic project has wound down. They are still putting out novels, but they're few and far between, and as far as I can tell, inconsequential. Mm-hmm. The only things that are left on the slate are The Mandalorian and Grogu, Ahsoka Season 2, and Starfighter.
Right.
And when those are done, we hear nothing. Now, for what Kathleen has said about James Mangold,
the Darth Maul cartoon.
Oh, that's right. There is that one. I forgot about that one. But that one I think is just going to be, an integral series that is still trying to wrap up that storyline about the underworld.
They have one major card to play in the Darth Maul series. And I wonder if they play it right away, if they play it at all, and that is Darth Maul versus Vader.
They would well, here's the problem. I agree with you. That would be great fan service, but Darth Maul against Vader, Maul ain't walking away. and,
Right.
and the thing is, we know that Maul gets taken out by Obi-Wan. So if they do that, they would have to get really creative about how that fight goes if you're going to accept it, because
Yeah.
I don't see Maul surviving.
Right. I mean, that's the one, because, well, my other thing is, like, how are you going to make Darth Maul a protagonist of a cartoon show? And one of the ways you do that is you put him up against the Empire because he's running a criminal organization.
This is actually one of the things that I think that Filoni and Lucasfilm have done right. Is I was completely against bringing Darth Maul back when they did it in the Clone Wars. I thought this is a dumb idea. The guy was cut in half. But there are some times when you get a storyline and a performance that elevates the idea of the material well enough that they earn the retcon. And in this case, I think that's what happened with Maul, because Sam Witwer loves the character. He's done a great job with it. You got Clancy Brown in as Savage Opress. They have the amazing storyline and the fight with Palpatine, which, despite the fact that I don't think that Palpatine should be a duelist, that is a scene that is genuinely scary. And ultimately, Maul was a character that had fantastic potential that did just sort of get robbed. He was just a thug in the Phantom Menace, but there was so much more there. And turning him into a tragic character, the idea of this guy that thought he was going to be at the right hand of the most powerful man in the galaxy,
And one day be the most powerful man in the galaxy if the rule of two stands.
And was thrown away with the trash, and he just can't let it go. Maul, Obi-Wan is right about Maul. If Maul would just let it go, dude, you're not the guy. If he just accepted that, he actually could have had a good life, but he couldn't let it go. He was obsessed with it. He grasped at it. He kept trying to claw his way back, only to be continually humiliated. And ultimately, he fails to learn the lesson. And Obi-Wan's the one who has to give it to him at the end. And that the history between those two characters becomes tragic. There is tenderness in Obi-Wan as he's cradling Maul as he's dying, because he recognizes the tragedy here.
Yeah.
And that's coming from the man who killed the woman that Obi-Wan loved.
And for all intents and purposes, his father.
Yeah. So that, I think, those arcs redeem the idea of the Maul resurrection. Normally, I wouldn't give you that chip, but I think they played those storylines well enough that, okay, you earned it, and I'm glad that you did it.
I love Maul's final word. That Maul's final word is one of hope directed at Luke, but also like tinged through a Sith lens of he will avenge us.
Yep.
Like, because the Jedi doesn't seek avenging, but like in Maul's mind, that's hope. Like, I think that entire scene from beginning to end is just exquisitely perfect.
Yeah, it's like Rebels. I have some quibbles with Rebels here and there, but honestly, for the first project that Lucasfilm put out, it actually did give us hope and tided us over until we got that first movie.
Do you think they were planning Rebels before the Disney purchase? Like, do you think George had maybe helped lay it out?
I
Because
don't
it doesn't
think so.
feel like Disney Star Wars.
Well, that's a trickier subject for me to tackle. It doesn't feel like Disney Star Wars. I think it does in some ways, but I'm not certain that it was planned beforehand. I think they knew that when they made the announcement, they knew the fan base was going to be nervous, and they knew they needed to have something. And there is a definite, especially in the first season, they had a limited number of character models. You kept seeing particular character models pop up for multiple different NPCs because that's all they had. They had downgraded the graphical style from the Clone Wars because they didn't have the budget. I think it was just turned around quickly. But it kind of worked to their advantage, because one of the ways that they they sold the idea of a graphical downgrade is they adapted Ralph McQuarrie's concept art style, which I thought was a really smart idea, with one exception. I hated the stubby TIE fighter wings.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I'm thinking about the Maul, Extreme Meme Supreme makes a good point. He goes, Maul versus Vader, no one can win. Fandom will be split. That's why Godzilla versus Kong was bad. I'm gonna push back on that a little bit. Not that it was bad. So I just watched Godzilla versus Kong this weekend, actually. I really want to watch that Monarch show on Apple. And so my wife has never seen any of like the MonsterVerse stuff. And so I was like, okay, well, we'll go back. We didn't watch the first Godzilla movie because that's trash. But we watched King of the Monsters, we watched Skull Island, and we watched Godzilla versus Kong. There is a winner. Godzilla wins. Like, Kong is literally left dying after the fight with Godzilla, and the humans like resuscitate him essentially.
That's the one where he gets the power fist armor.
No, that's the most recent one. I haven't seen that one yet.
All right, so I've seen a bunch of them too, but I don't really I don't remember the details because it's not that kind of movie, kid. But these are the kind of movies that they're just big dumb fun, and sometimes you want big, really dumb fun.
Well, so the problem with Godzilla versus Kong is they keep cutting to like, you have the humans that are like adjacent to the Kong Godzilla story. And I'm okay with like, that's like Skarsgård and all of them, like the little girl that does the sign language with him. I liked that. But then you keep cutting to Millie Bobby Brown for no other reason than we want Millie Bobby Brown in this movie because she was in King of the Monsters. I'm like, no, absolutely not. She's terrible in this, and her storyline is so dumb. Like, we could have revealed Mecha Godzilla without having to follow Millie Bobby Brown for the entire movie. Because the whole point of her is that she uncovers that they're building Mecha Godzilla. We could have just seen that.
Now, one of the things I think is cool about the Monarch show you were talking about is, if I remember right, I think Kurt Russell's in that, which is not a property that I would have ever expected Kurt Russell to be in.
Not only that, so Monarch takes place in the past and the present, and Kurt Russell plays the character in the present and in the past,
it's his son.
played by his son.
Yeah, Wyatt. And from what I understand, Kurt, I remember reading an interview with him where he was talking about how it was so surreal watching his son act in this way because they'd never acted together before. And he gained a new respect for his son because his son was watching him to try and figure out, okay, I know my dad, but how do I ape his mannerisms in such a way that it doesn't feel like acting, but you do have to play this character earlier, you know?
They're both playing the same character. So it's a very interesting. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that works out. I have heard like what Nate told me was he thought that the past thing with Wyatt Russell is phenomenal, that storyline, and the present storyline is garbage. So
that's a shame.
Yeah. So I'm interested in that, but I mean, like, I really like, I don't know. I kind of like Godzilla versus Kong. So you have basically essentially 3 rounds of the fight. You have the first round, it takes place on the water where Kong is being transported on the big ship in the aircraft carrier. And I love that fight because it's so creative, because Kong is literally jumping from ship to ship because he can't swim.
If I remember right, though, there's some scenes in that fight that imply that the ocean is pretty shallow, but I don't
maybe
recall.
It's shallow if you're Godzilla.
Yeah, it's been far enough removed, but yes, it's like sometimes I think the appeal of these movies is that you're taking something that is like what we would have done as kids when you've got your action figures of both Godzilla and King Kong, and you're just smashing them together, and then you're bringing in some of your other toys and going, and then this happens. And some people would say that's the Dave Filoni method of making a story, but sometimes that works. Sometimes it's fun.
Well, so then the second round happens, and Kong beats him in the second round, which is the first fight that happens in Hong Kong. But then when Godzilla gets up and the third round starts, I mean, it ends with Kong literally dying and having to be like electroshocked back to life. So I honestly, like with Vader and Ahsoka, there was no winner there either, and people still like that fight. I don't think that a Vader Maul fight would be Yeah, I don't think that a lack of a clear winner. I mean, I'm pretty sure Vader will end up being the clear winner. I'm pretty sure Maul will leave that fight with no legs, but he's probably just going to get, he's probably going to get away.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what they do with it. I don't know that I'm going to watch it. I haven't watched several of the last animated shows. I kind of gave up on the Bad Batch. I didn't watch Underworld or any of that stuff. So like you, I'm burned out on a lot of the Disney Star Wars stuff.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
So my question now, so Ahsoka season 2 is coming up. Nobody cares about that. Nobody wants that. The Darth Maul. The other thing about the Darth Maul thing is it's going to have Darth Talon in it, and it's going to be a very, like, is Darth Talon going to be a girl boss? Is the show going to actually be about her? Is it not going to be about Darth Maul? And then you've got Mando and Grogu, which there's no excitement for. Like I said, Ahsoka season 2, no excitement for that. And then what was the other thing that they have?
Starfighter.
I mean, I don't think there's any excitement for that either.
Well, I gotta throw them a bone here. It's not like they've started the marketing push for it either. The general
There's
public
maybe
isn't
some
even aware of it.
curiosity about it, especially after that Tom Cruise reveal. But I mean, what can they? I don't know. And then the other side of this that we talk about is the fact that Kathleen Kennedy has basically stated that Indiana Jones is a dead franchise. She corporated it up. She basically was like, oh, well, there's always going to be, the story will never end. It will always be going on. But, right now there's nothing, and we canceled all active projects.
Yeah. But I mean, let's look at this through the lens that we look at Star Wars, and what they're doing there. They're in a real bind because they have the same problem that they had with Solo. What do you do with Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford? Because Harrison can't do it. And I think it's a mistake to try and keep pushing the story forward because Indy doesn't belong in this time frame. That's why he should have stopped at the 50s at the very latest. And you could argue whether or not he even belonged there. There's a lot of people that would say he doesn't, and they reject Crystal Skull. I'm not one of them.
Right.
But I think, to me, the clear transition is that you have the pulp era, 20s, 30s, 40s, and a bit of the 50s. Really, the 50s is when you're getting into the B sci-fi era. That's what they did with Crystal Skull. And then the 60s is squarely James Bond. That is James Bond's era. It's not Indiana Jones, and he doesn't work there. So then the question is, okay, so if you're not going to be pushing it into the future, then you're going to have to do the past. Then the question becomes, are we rebooting the series? That's not a good idea. Are we recasting the series? Personally, I think you could, but there's going to be a segment of the fan base that is going to absolutely destroy me for that opinion. And then the final question is, all right, if it's not either of those options, your only other options are other media. So it's comic books, it's games, it's novels, it's things like that, computer games, but nothing else. And that's not really an alive property in my mind, but we'd have to wait and see. And then I guess there's another option that you could go with if you wanted to, and that is the AI option. And boy, howdy, is that going to cause controversy if they try and do something like that. So
Right.
my opinion is that the franchise is not wholly dead, because I think that despite what you may or may not think of the Great Circle, it was critically lauded, and I believe that a good portion of the fan base liked what they did there. And given that, it was certainly better received than something like, say, Dial of Destiny. So that proves there's still interest in the character. But something that I also think that people underestimate is the difficulty in writing an Indiana Jones story, because there are some very specific requirements of Indiana Jones that do not exist for Star Wars.
Mhm.
And those are difficult to adapt into a story that is satisfying to the audience. So it's always important to keep that in mind as well.
So somebody made the comment on one of my videos because, I talked about the fact that Star Wars will always go on, but Indiana Jones, it's, we don't know. And they said that, well, Indiana Jones is about Indiana Jones. Star Wars is a universe, which there's definite logic to that. Now, the one thing that Kennedy had said that was going to happen that they nixed was an animated series. Would you have liked Clone Wars Indiana Jones if that's what they did?
different style, not Clone Wars style, not the 3D animated thing. There was a trailer that an independent artist put out several years ago now that was basically a blue sky concept of what an Indiana Jones animated series could look like. There was no voice, but there was soundtrack to it, and the animation style there was superb. It was just a gorgeous, gorgeous trailer. And unfortunately, I can't remember the name of it or the name of the artist, but if you go out there and look and find it, you can find it. I noticed that in a lot of the stories talking about Kathleen Kennedy's comments here, they have been including screenshots of concept art that was showing like the character key art. So that was from that trailer, and you guys
Okay.
can go and find it.
Was it like classic animation style, like hand drawn animation, or because I feel like modern Lucasfilm would have definitely been computer generated.
Well, honestly, think of it as a little bit like a more serious take on DuckTales in a way.
Mhm.
If you were going to do a DuckTales style adventure or Rescue Rangers kind of a thing, just Indiana Jones, it's mimicking that style. So yeah,
Yeah. Mr. D Marks here says Indy's son could have carried the fedora. It was the only good thing about Crystal Skull, the open ending. I agree that the open ending was good. I liked that where it was like it could continue with Mutt or Indy could still be Indy. Like,
I disagree because I
okay,
think Indy is about Indy. A lot of people do ask me, it's like, well, do you think that you could spin off the character or do a passing of the mantle to somebody else?
that's
And
what
a
they
lot of
wanted to do with Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
a lot of people bring up short round too, and it's like, no, you can't. Again, because of the constraints of the period, you can't carry the story forward, and Indiana Jones is Indiana Jones. That's not to say you couldn't do a spin-off series that was not Indiana Jones, but I don't think that's what people are there for. Now, I think something should be done with short round. I think that's actually a story they kind of need to address. And in fact, I don't know if I have this. I think I do. Let me see if I can find this for you. I discovered, I was going to talk about this on, maybe this is what we do tonight. Um, there it is. There was an
You want to bring it
artist,
up?
not yet. I want to talk about it first.
Okay.
There was a Lucasfilm concept artist. I don't know if he's still employed by Lucasfilm or not, but he put this up in his portfolio not terribly long ago, I believe. And this was talking about a potential Indiana Jones movie that never got made. And this was one that I was not aware of, but I thought the concept art was cool, so I saved it in case we ever wanted to talk about it. This is what it is. Go ahead and put it up now.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah. Now,
I have a feeling this might be what the ride is in Animal Kingdom.
well, I guess it's possible. I don't know for sure. Now, one
Well,
of
they
the
had
questions,
Kiwi Kwan doing the like reveal for it. So I'm like, oh, is he in this? Like,
yeah. Now, what you can see here, I think this is likely AI generated because there's some inconsistencies in what's being displayed here. Obviously, these look like zombies of some kind, but the one that he's punching there looks like it's got some technological crap on his back. So I'm
Oh.
not sure what that's about. But if you look at short round there, that's an adult short round.
that is Kiwi
So
Kwan as an adult, yeah, with the glasses and everything.
yeah, so I think this is actually something that could have been, um, or might yet be something cool that they do as a spinoff. And I think this is the one unanswered question that we have about Indy is what did happen to Short Brown? We don't know. He's a beloved character. Everybody loves Key. And there's been the reunion video between him and Harrison Ford that will bring a tear to your eye if you watch it.
Oh, from the Oscars?
Yeah.
When he asks, are you short round?
Yep. Yeah, and he says, yes, Indy. And that's like, oh.
He
And
should
then
have said
there's
Dr. Jones, but you know.
that is the one thing that I think was amiss in, well, not the one thing. It is one of the things that was amiss in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is when they had that wedding scene, Short Round should have been there. That to me that was a must. He needed to be in one of the pews.
Do you
And
think
one of the
they ignored short round in those things, much like the way they tried to ignore the prequels because that was the one that people quote unquote didn't like?
I think it's a possibility. I think there's also probably squeamishness today about the idea of Indy going on this hellish adventure with a young kid, and the scolds of today would be saying that's irresponsible. But it's like it's an adventure movie. Of course, everything they do is irresponsible.
Yeah.
Um,
Batman trains kids to be ninjas and fight crime with them. See that clown with the machete? I want you to go over there and talk to him.
yeah, this is the thing that I think. I think there is a story here that needs to be told. That Short Round needs to be in one more story,
Yeah, I
just
agree.
just to explain what happened to him. Where did he go? I have no doubt they stayed in touch. I don't think that this was a thing where Indy fobbed Short Round off and never thought about him again. Um,
I forget who it was. Somebody was pitching an indie plot on one of the streams that I was on recently, where it was like, you could have done Dial of Destiny with Short Round instead of Phoebe Waller-Bridge, in terms of like, Short Round felt abandoned by Indy or something like that,
Still
and
doesn't work.
that's why he would steal the thing. I'm like, I don't think Short Round would ever steal from Indy.
No, and the biggest problem with Dial of Destiny, I contend, is while you've obviously made Indy a bitter old man, and you killed Mutt, which I think was also a mistake. The real problem with Dial of Destiny is the artifact. The dial doesn't work in the context of the other Indy movies, and I think that that's the fatal flaw that underpins the entire movie. They
Right.
can't even decide how the dial really works. They fudge that in the movie, but the biggest mistake with it is it's not a religious artifact. It's an entirely, uh, I I almost said entirely made up thing, except that that's not. There is a real Antikythera mechanism. That the backstory is essentially what they put in the movie. It is an artifact that fascinated scholars for the longest time because in essence, they thought it shouldn't exist. This is a complex piece of machinery that, for the
Right.
time that it was created, is way more advanced than what we understand of the civilization that made it. But the thing is, we know what it does. And it also doesn't look anything like what it looks like in the movie. So they just completely abandoned any attempt to be adventure movie historically accurate.
Mhm.
And I think you can't do that. You actually have to pay attention to what the history is.
Agreed. Did Mutt die in Vietnam?
That's what they imply. Yes.
He could still be alive. You could do the whole Mutt as a prisoner of war in Vietnam and bring him back that way.
Yeah, but what are you going to do with it? It's still the wrong time frame. Part of
Yeah.
the reason that I argue that this was a mistake is because Indiana was originally not intended to ever be a series where the character had an arc. But over time, that's actually what it became. And it really started with Last Crusade. Once you introduced the idea that Indy had a father and they had a falling out, and that was important to the development of the character, suddenly he becomes a character that's not just these one off adventures, but that there is some continuity to what happens. And
Right.
then when you realize that, in spite of the fact that the audience didn't really get it, the temple takes place before Raiders. Now you start to see he goes from a cynical mercenary who doesn't care about people, all he cares about is fortune and glory, to then by the time he gets to Crystal Skull, he realizes that the people are what's important, and he has mended all of his relationships. He's gotten the girl that he recognizes as the real treasure, and he has this son. And he goes from being this cold, callous individual to somebody who learns there's more to life than this. And that's a great place to leave the character. People would argue the same thing about Last Crusade, is that you essentially get the same ending. He rides off into the sunset.
Yeah.
Either one of those is a great place to leave the character. What you do with Dial of Destiny is you rob him of all of that. You break the man's heart. You take away his wife, you take away his son, you leave him broken, embittered, and wanting to die. And that's mean-spirited. That takes away all of the character development and just leaves him a broken husk.
It's the same thing they did with the Star Wars sequel trilogy. It's the Lucasfilm playbook. Han Solo ends Return of the Jedi, being with Princess Leia. They're in love. He's got friends now. He's a hero now. Luke Skywalker is looking at the ghosts of the past and giving them that nod and that smile that assures them, I have achieved my destiny and I'm going to do as you've asked me to do. And then we find out, no, he didn't do any of that. None of that
One of the
happened.
things one of the things I'm going to go into a personal rant here a little bit, and it's about the
Please.
Great Circle because I see that a lot of people they rag on the Great Circle quite a bit. The game that came out a little over a year ago,
Yeah.
and I question whether those people that are ragging on it played the game or if they made assumptions based on what they saw on the behind the scenes video. Now, there are things in Great Circle that are woke. I'm not going to dance around that. And there are, I would argue with some of the gameplay mechanics in that they completely nerfed firearms. They did that for a reason because they were trying to promote a certain type of gameplay. But I think there was a better way to do it. I think it could have been implemented better and been more satisfying for the player.
Mm-hmm.
What I liked about the game is these guys got the character of Indy. And one of the things that they explicitly address in that game, and why I think it actually belongs in the movie canon, is because they address the idea that Indy at this point, between Raiders and Last Crusade, has got a fear of commitment. It's addressing the question of what happened with you and Marion at the end of Raiders? Why did you split again?
Right.
And there are some great dramatic scenes in that game where Indy is recounting to the female lead in Great Circle what happened there. And then there's another optional side quest in the game that is he basically gets essentially poisoned by one of the poison dart frogs, and there's a hallucinatory adventure that ties into not only the theme of the game, but everything about Indy's character that for me is one of the greatest explorations of the character himself in any media. And you take those two things together and it's like they sold me on the game plus the villain. I would say that the villain in the game is second only to Belloc and slightly above Bolaram. So I would say they created the classic villain. They did a fantastic exploration of the character, and this ties into that character arc that we're talking about. If you take all of those stories together, there is now a clear character arc that matures the characters throughout the series. There are some people, like Retroblasting, who don't want that. They believe that it should remain purely a cinematic one-off adventure serial where the character doesn't change. I disagree with that. I like the fact that the character does change over time. So that's just a personal disagreement.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. Like I said, I still haven't played that game just again because I just can't do first person. I've always said that Lucasfilm could have had a phenomenal franchise, video game franchise with Indiana Jones if they just made it in the style of like Uncharted, where you're solving the puzzles and but like, you're doing it. I just don't like the first person thing.
I'm telling you, I was with you all the way until I played the game. I much prefer third person view for an indie game.
Yeah.
But in this case, it startled me how immersive it did become when you get that first person view. And it ended up being not an issue for me.
Liquid Fox, by the way, checking in for $5 Canadian, says, you're a hardcore Star Wars fan when you wonder what Ewoks smell like. Bloody hell, Lorn. They probably do smell like bloody hell.
Yeah, I think it's likely. I wouldn't say that I wonder what they smell like, but I did consider when they're roasting, it's probably not a pleasant smell. I would imagine.
It's, a lot of burnt hair and.
Well, they strike me as greasy little guys, so I think that would contribute.
Chef Eddie for $2 says 2 words to save Star Wars: Ewok Jedi. I'm shocked there's never been an Ewok Jedi.
There was an Ewok X-Wing pilot.
Was there really?
I'm being somewhat facetious here. This is actually in the X-Wing series of novels. I think it was Wraith Squadron, not Rogue Squadron, if I remember right. But there was a running joke between a couple of the pilots about what it would be like to fly with an Ewok. And as it happens, they discover that their communications were overheard by Imperials. They were intercepted. And so they had to basically fake an Ewok pilot. So they created the puppet that somebody was manipulating to. It's a running joke. So not a real Ewok pilot, but it's played for laughs. So.
But I mean, like an Ewok could be a Jedi if the Force is involved with all life. I mean, you could have an Ewok Jedi somewhere in there.
Theoretically speaking, I suppose.
Maybe in the new. I mean, not pre because the Ewoks weren't a discovered species until Return of the Jedi from far. Also, somebody pointed out to me that like the word Ewok does not is never spoken in Return of the Jedi. Like they were never named in Return of the Jedi.
I think that's true. Also, Sith is never uttered in the original trilogy, although there was a cut of A New Hope where Sith was mentioned in the conference room scene on the Death Star with Tarkin and the others, but that was cut. So
the first time I ever saw the term Dark Lord of the Sith was in Shadows of the Empire.
I don't remember where I first encountered it.
I'm fairly certain that Darth Vader is described by Shizor in Shadows of the Empire as the Dark Lord of the Sith.
Well, the question that I have that I don't think has actually been answered yet is, do we just assume now that Darth is a contraction of Dark Lord of the Sith?
I've always assumed that's what it is, yeah.
Okay. I've always sort of mentally debated that because it makes sense, but I'm not sure I like it. I remember when before the prequels came out, there's actually a diehard, I think is he Dutch? Roderick Van Hogen. Do you know him?
No, I don't.
Okay, he is a priest who I think that he's Dutch, if I remember correctly. And before the prequels came out, he was like everybody else, like we all were reading all of the websites and teasing out details of what was going to be in the prequel movies. And he had this site that he called the Virtual Editions.
Okay.
And what he was doing at the time was creating concept artwork basically and doing storyboards to put together the entire story of the films. And it was really cool. I remember going back there. He basically spoiled all of the Phantom Menace, though at the time, as we were putting the pieces together, it evolved because there were things that we didn't quite get that were right. Pod racers were depicted as spaceships in space. You know, it was all that kind of weird stuff. He's one of those guys that still does Star Wars reaction videos and things like that. But what I remember about the virtual editions is that's where I first learned that Darth wasn't a name, it was a title.
Right.
Because we heard Darth Maul, and that became, it's like everybody's heads exploded. It's like, what do you mean Darth Maul? And I remember thinking, everybody at the time were going, that's stupid. I hate that idea. That's like, it's Darth Vader is a name. It's not a title. And now it's like, that's just
it's just what it is now. Yeah.
It's just what it is. But at the time it was like, we were furious about it. It's like, who came up with
I remember
George Lucas has lost his mind.
Yeah. I remember hearing Dark Lord of the Sith in Empire Strikes Back, or not the Shadows of the Empire. But yeah, I'm like you. I never even considered another person could be called Darth until the Phantom Menace came out, and all of a sudden it was Darth Maul. And because at the time I was frequenting, we had like a little toy and anime store in my hometown at the time, which is like such a thing that you wouldn't expect for like that time period. And they had all the episode 1 toys in there. And I remember seeing Darth Maul and Darth Sidious and being like, what is this? So yeah, it was definitely interesting. Liquid Fox for $2 says, who would you guys pick to play a young Indy? I always liked the idea of Chris Pratt.
Yeah, I was the same. I think he would be the best guy currently in Hollywood to do it. One, because he's shown that he can bulk up and do the physique where, you know, you don't have to be like a beefcake, but you do have to be fit and sell that you can do the stunts. I think he's also got the right style of humor. He pulls off the right kind of comedy. He's not Harrison Ford, but I think that if you wanted to do younger guys, I don't want to do young Indy. I want to do younger Indy.
What would you think about the dude that played Han in Solo?
Alden Ehrenreich?
I couldn't think of his name.
I think he got a bad rap on Solo.
I do too.
Because there are obviously it's not Harrison Ford in Solo, but there are a couple of scenes where it is Harrison Ford in Solo. There's a couple of very specific scenes where he does something or says something, or actually there's one in particular where his voice hits me like a lightning bolt, where suddenly he sounds like Harrison.
Yeah.
And every time it whips my head around and goes, what was that? He's playing Han before Han is fully formed, and I don't think he got enough credit for that.
I agree.
Now, do I think he would make a good Indy? No. but I would have liked to have seen more Han, if I'm going to be honest. I think that
I
they left him in a place at the end of that movie where I would have been really excited to see what they did with a Han that was more Han.
I agree. I really like I also really like Donald Glover as Lando. I know it's not a popular opinion. I don't like the thing with the activist Phoebe Waller-Bridge robot and you know the fact that he's sleeping with it, but I thought he did a really good job of kind of channeling Billy D. Williams.
Yes, he did. I think he did a fantastic performance. I think he naturally slotted into the role. The issue was not Donald Glover. The issue was what they did with his character. They
Correct.
assassinated him.
I mean, I
And
like that he was more of like the scoundrel version of Lando than we ever see because when we meet Lando, he's the head of Cloud City, so he's already got some responsibility. Like we got like pure and I think it would almost hit better if we didn't get that version of Lando from Billy D. Williams in Rebels, and it was awesome because Billy D. got to play that version of Lando in Rebels, and I love every Lando episode in Rebels. It's always amazing when he shows up.
and I love that Billy still loves to play that character. He actually likes and respects the character.
My idea for a Lando show was always you have both Billy D. Williams and Donald Glover in it, and you're telling a Lando story in the present of Billy D. Williams, but it harkens, it's like Arrow style, where like it harkens back to something that happened when he was younger, and you're getting the stories kind of simultaneously.
What I wanted to see out of another Solo movie is I honestly wanted to see Han in the corporate sector, and they kind of gave us the equivalent of the corporate sector in Andor. So we got to see a little bit of how that worked with the private security forces, which from the novels would have been called Espos. You know, there was a lot of potential there. One of the other things that I loved about Solo that I don't think gets enough credit, and it surprised me, was I liked the pristine Millennium Falcon. I liked seeing it as it's like, this is a beautiful, classy ship. It's got
The
it.
escape pod in the middle, like.
And I love the fact that they just wrecked it when they went through the maw and all of that, and they crashed it on the planet. It's like, oh my god, it's just a wreck. I thought it's like, you know what? That's something I never would have thought of. That idea wouldn't have occurred to me. It surprised me. It delighted me, and it got me where the Falcon is the Falcon, and it's Han's baby. That is Han's first love, is that ship, and I thought they did that right. I thought I'm going to pronounce his name wrong, but Jonas Swatamo, I think is his name, the guy who took over for Peter Mayhew to play Chewie. And granted, Chewie is not a speaking part, but
you got to stand there and go like this occasionally.
He embodied Chewie, though, and despite the fact that you had previous Han stories that are now in the canon, retconned with this meeting between Han and Chewie, putting them together in a pit and having them fight, I love it. That was something I hadn't thought of, and it's like, I like it. And ultimately, because of the prequels, those original Han stories don't fit in the timeline anymore anyway. So,
yeah. James All Day TV for $5 says, if they were to bring Mutt back, would they bring Shia LaBeouf back or recast him? I think they would bring Shia LaBeouf back, but I probably think he should be recast.
I don't think they would. I think that he angered Spielberg and Harrison when he made comments, about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. He came out bad-mouthing the movie and saying that he thought that a lot of the stuff that was in there was dumb. And Harrison came out and said, that's one of the dumbest things you ever did for your career, kid. That's why they killed him.
Okay, that makes sense. Then, yeah, I guess you would recast.
Yep.
So, all right, Lorn. I think that's all the time we have for today because we are sending our audience over to the Pro Show, which starts in just 3 minutes. But before we do that, I will tell you, I actually saw 28 years later The Boneyard yesterday, or not the Boneyard, the Bone Temple.
Was it good?
Actually, yes. It is not a movie that I would have ever gone to see on my own, but we had to watch it for the HCast today because Nate wanted to talk about it. So I spent the weekend on top of watching Kong and Godzilla. I also watched 28 Days Later and then 28 Years Later. And I skipped 28 Weeks Later. And I didn't like 28 Years Later at first, but then after I saw the Bone Temple, it made me retroactively like that movie better. Bone Temple was very good. I gotta say,
it's rare that a sequel redeems the previous movie.
Yeah, I really, I mean, it's bombing horrifically because nobody liked the last one, but I gotta say, I enjoyed it. It's not usually a Marv kind of movie, but I sat in I was, first of all, I was the only person in the theater. So like I always get the aisle seat in the movie theater, but for this one, so there was nobody in the theater. So I moved to the center, and then I had my popcorn on the seat here, and I had my mozzarella sticks on the seat here. So it was just kind of like, throughout the movie. And recliner seat. I was pleased as pie. But I actually really dug the film. I think that it is a shame that it's not doing better than it's doing.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, but sorry to hear that apparently nobody else is.
Apparently not. We're going to talk about it on the H-Cast today, guys. So 4 p.m. over on Mr. H Reviews. Make sure you check that out. Lorn, what we got? We don't know what we're doing tonight, but you want to plug the show for tonight?
Absolutely. We're going to have an epic spectacular that will leave your mind melted. You won't believe the goodness that we're going to bring to you. It is so unbelievable. We don't even believe it. We don't know
religion or better.
But we are confident as heck. Come watch us.
Yes. All right, guys. For me, make sure you check out. We have a new video that's going to be coming out very soon about Nerdrotic and the Critical Drinker decimating the numbers for Starfleet Academy on YouTube. So make sure you look out for that. Probably come within the next, probably in the next hour or so, because it's already uploading in the background. And then we're going to be on the Pro Show in a few minutes, and then I'll be on the H-Cast tonight, and then Lauren Apollo tonight at 11 p.m. Tomorrow we'll have our regular game stream at around 7 p.m. So we're going to continue with Batman Arkham Asylum. Make sure you tune in for that. And then, of course, Thursday night, our big 6,000 subscriber celebration. Cannot wait for that. Make sure you're there, 8 p.m. for the M4 cast. All right, from all of us here at the M4 Empire, I thank you for your attention, and we'll catch you on the next one and see you on the Pro Show.